Hey, what's up, guys? Today I want to talk about some takeaways from last night's game, some observations from Tampa Bay versus Dallas. I want to start off with Tom Brady. First takeaway, Tom Brady's going to be just fine. We were all wondering what a 44-year-old would look like. Tom Brady obviously was great last year, off to a hot start this year. He did have 2 interceptions, but if you watch the game, you know that one was a short pass that doinked off of Leonard Fournette's hands, should have been a catch that just bounced into a defender's arms, and the other one was a Hail Mary interception before halftime. So those aren't going to be plays that really impact those games necessarily in a negative favor towards Tom Brady. Now, obviously, the Leonard Fournette interception was bad. Tampa Bay helped Dallas out quite a bit, but it wasn't Brady's fault. That's on Leonard Fournette. He has to catch that pass. So Brady looked great, completed 64% of his passes, had some good throws at all levels of the field. So I think Brady is going to have a very good year again. As long as his arm holds up throughout the year, because again, that would probably be the one thing that we could have to look for is a 17-game season. 44-year-old quarterback, just making sure he's still all that by the end of the year, but off to a hot start. Observation number 2, Dak Prescott's going to be in the running to win the yardage crown again this year. I say again because he was going to win it last year based on what Dallas' offense was doing, based on how much he was throwing the ball. He's going to be in that conversation again this year just based on how much Dallas is going to rely on his arm. He was throwing it a ridiculous amount of times last year, and last game and last year as well, proving that there's really nothing left over from that shoulder injury. He looks like perfectly fine. He was throwing the ball quite a bit. Didn't seem to be any abnormal hitches in his motion. So it looks like he's going to be fine this year and have another productive passing season. Last year he was on pace to for over 6,000 passing yards before he got hurt, which is just insane in a 16-game season. I'm not suggesting he'll be on that level again this year, but he's still going to be one of the most productive passers in the NFL, and I expect him to be around that mark. Be probably in the top 3, I would say, for passers this year in terms of passing yards, especially with the way Mike McCarthy is running this Dallas offense. Takeaway number 3, the Cowboys defense is better than I expected. And it's not to say that's a good defense. I wouldn't go that far. But they are better than I expected. Now, they benefited from some mistakes on the part of Tampa Bay. Ronald Jones obviously fumbling the ball. That ball bouncing off of Leonard Fournette's hands into the defender's arms. So there was some stuff they benefited from last night that really you can't count on a week-to-week basis, even though everyone kind of makes mistakes. Every team makes mistakes. I still think that the Dallas defense is better than what I thought it was going to be. Now, where did it come from? What really benefited them? The ability to hold up and stop the running game, even if Tampa Bay wasn't necessarily trying to exploit the running game so much, but they held up better in the running game than I expected. DeMarcus Lawrence is still a beast, still one of the better, or if not best, edge rushers in the NFL. And we saw it come out a couple times last night. Micah Parsons got lost in coverage once or twice, but looked like he was starting to figure things out and using his athleticism quite a bit. I think he'll be really good given a couple of games of experience here in the regular season. And being able to rotate in guys like Keanu Neal, Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, kind of rotate, get through those guys, I think really help that defense out because you have such a deep linebacking core. And that's going to be what you're relying on this year. The other guy you really need to help or have help from is Trevon Diggs, who got obviously an interception off of the Leonard Fournette tip pass. Diggs is probably your best corner at this point, and you're going to ask a lot from him this year. I don't know if he's going to be up to the challenge of guarding guys like Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I don't think he's going to be on par with that kind of receiver, but I think he'll be better than what people anticipate. I think he'll actually make some big plays for Dallas this year. And again, Dallas defense is better than what I thought they would be. Number 4, Devin White is still struggling in coverage. Now, Devin White is a controversial player. I'm a little bit lower on him than a lot of people are because of how many sacks he had last year. Just his raw numbers, people look at him and say he was one of the best linebackers in the NFL last year. I certainly think he has the potential to be one of the best linebackers in the NFL, but he's not been good in the passing game. And last night, there were a couple times in a row, I'm not saying in a row, but there were a couple times where he looked lost in the passing game, where he just was not in the exact position he needed to be, gave up a couple of passes, a couple of big plays. To me, Devin White has all the athleticism, all the tools, and he needs to be a really good defender in the passing game, but still was not quite at that level last night. Now, of course, it's just the opening of the season. Everything could change by the end of it, but still, Devin White is not necessarily comfortable in pass coverage yet. But I also want to talk about, I don't think 17-0 is possible for this Buccaneers team. I just don't. It wasn't possible last year, and you only beat the Dallas Cowboys by 3 points. Tampa Bay is an infinitely better team than Dallas. I understand it's the opening week. There's a lot of people figuring things out. These guys, there's only 3 preseason games. Not all these guys have played yet. There's a lot of stuff to go through. I get that. And the rookies are still learning. Younger players are still figuring things out. If you need a Tom Brady last-minute drive to kick a field goal to beat the Dallas Cowboys, a team that doesn't have much of anything on defense outside of Marcus Lawrence in terms of like superstar talent, when you yourselves have so much talent defensively and on offense, then I don't think 17-0 is a possibility. Especially if Tampa Bay decides to rest Tom Brady at any point in the season, which I wouldn't rule out in a 17-game season for a 44-year-old quarterback, even if it's the last week of the season, week 18, or it's week 17, whatever you want to say. I just don't think 17-0 is a possibility based on what I saw last night. And granted, the defense was really good, but they only sacked Dak Prescott once. I think Dallas was actually pretty smart in how they schemed offensively. Not necessarily in their game decisions, but the offensive scheme, not running the ball between the tackles so much, not putting Zeke Elliott in the line of fire with guys like Ndamukong Suh and Vita Vea in the middle, and kind of protecting Dak Prescott but letting him get the ball out in short passes. That was actually pretty smart offensive play calling by Dallas. And I understand maybe didn't show the full extent of Tampa Bay's defense because Dallas was trying to work around it. But most teams are going to do that this year. And Tampa Bay only sacked Dak Prescott one time when both of his tackles are coming off injured seasons. When Tyron Smith is a little bit on the decline, but still a top 200 player in my book, and still one of the better tackles in the NFL. And you didn't have Zach Martin, so there's a lot to take into account here. Tampa Bay was a good game. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed the game. But I think Tampa Bay was not as dominant as teams that you would expect to be in that 17-0 conversation. Now again, this is only week 1. Everything could change in week 2, but just want to throw it out there. I don't think they're going to be that 17-0 team. I know it's a discussion because Tom Brady's never had an undefeated season and a Super Bowl win all in 1 year. And that's like the one thing that he hasn't accomplished yet. But guys, it's so unrealistic. Let's not go putting the expectations out there that's going to happen this year. What else do I want to talk about? I don't know. I think that might be it. I wanted to say something about maybe Tampa Bay's cornerback room. I still think it's highly talented, but it's going against top receivers. You know the corners are always at a disadvantage because of how the NFL officiates, because wide receivers get to do a little bit more than corners can. And corners, if you're ever caught in the it looks like you're even committing pass interference whatsoever, you're probably going to get flagged for it. So I think the corners for Tampa Bay held up pretty well last night, despite covering guys like Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, both had over 100 receiving yards. And an offense for Dallas that was throwing the ball so much. And that's actually what I want to talk about, the Dallas offense. And that scheme they were running, I thought the play calling and also just the decision to avoid running the ball so much, especially like sitting in between tackles, was very smart. That was a really good decision by Dallas. Because you saw, I kept them in the game. They were almost winning. And they didn't run to the teeth of a Tampa Bay defense that also has Lavonte David and Devin White in there. Very good play calling there. Very smart decision making. And really gave Dallas a chance to win the game. What took it away from them was a little bit the decision making by Mike McCarthy throughout the game. Well, there was even going for that 60-yard field goal before halftime. I know the Buccaneers didn't score off of that, but there's a good chance they could have, though. And had they kicked the field goal there, then even at the end of the game, they would never have needed Tom Brady to do that game-winning drive because they still would have been up. And McCarthy attempted a couple field goals at different points in the game where he could have gone for it, he could have gone for more. And I think people are going to be pointing at that today and say, look, Dallas could have won this game. They really could have. They had every opportunity to. They were in the red zone a couple times. They missed a couple kicks, extra points, field goals, and they didn't go for it at certain points in the game. People are going to be pointing to that and say, look, Mike McCarthy, you have to be a little bit more aggressive when you're playing a team against like Tampa Bay. A team that is so dominant. People are even talking about going 17. It won't happen, but people are talking about it. And it's Tom Brady on the other side. You know you can't give the ball back to him late in the game. You have to make sure, or even late in the second half, you can't be doing that to Tom Brady. You have to be more aggressive. So I think that's one thing Dallas needs to keep in mind. Excellent play calling last night in terms of their scheme, what they're going to do, how they're going to avoid playing into the hands of this Tampa Bay defense. That was really good on their part. What wasn't was just the decision-making when it came to the red zone and trying to get points on the board. But again, Mike McCarthy has never, at least not right now, been one of the better coaches in the NFL. Last year, there was quite a few issues as well. We'll see how long of a leash he has in Dallas. I know Jerry Jones is getting impatient for a Super Bowl title, so we'll see if this changes throughout the year, if Mike McCarthy adjusts and becomes a little bit more aggressive in his decision-making late in games. But we'll see how it plays out. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all later.